So this video is just how to put the Waltham movement back into the Waltham case. There are different Walthams and there are different Waltham cases, but this is the one that we took out in the last video. If you know how to put a Waltham movement back into a Waltham case, you won't be watching this. You'll already know how to do it. If you've not done it before, obviously it goes back in the way you took it out. The only thing that's going to trip you up is this little winding square here. There's a little winding square in there, and obviously it's square, and it goes into this winding hole here, which is square. So you've got this will be pointing. This can be pointing in any direction it wants to be pointing in. So can this one. So rather than just try to put it in, you've got to line that square up with that square up. That's basically the only thing. And the other thing, if you've never done it before, that might trip you up, is you've taken it out and you've cleaned the case, or you've swapped the case, or it's a different case. You might have pushed the crown back in there. So you see that when you pull the crown out, it just gives you a couple of millimeters extra. If you've pushed it back in like that, it will go back in, but it'll be very difficult, and some of them won't go back in at all with the crown pushed in. So all you've got to do is make sure the crown's pulled out, make sure the screws aren't in the back of the case. Alright, this one had a broken screw in it. So while your movement's out, you want to get that screw out. See, it comes out quite easily. I'm just doing it with my finger, fortunately. I should have done this before. Anyway, that's a screw that's snapped in half, and while it was out of the case, you managed just to get enough turn on it. So you want to take that screw out with your fingers, because you can. These are just broken movements. They're not for anyone or ever going to be watches ever again. So you get the square, you pull your stem out, line the square up, he says. There. And then just push the crown back in, it'll help it stay in. Obviously you don't want to touch the dial, you don't want to touch the hands. The crystal pops out when I was taking the watch out, so that's something you've got to look out for. So if you think you can just take a watch apart and you have no problems with it, the crystals popped out when I took the bezel off, because the bezel's only thin, it moves a lot. So you're going to have to contend with that, putting it back in. You've got to make sure you're going to be able to do that. You don't want to touch the hands, you don't want to touch the dial. You want to wear finger clocks, really, but it's a different day, that. I'm just going to put the bezel back on. There's a cutout for the spring at the top, and there's a cutout at the bottom for the hinge at the bottom. So you've got to make sure it's right round. Put it back on, and I'm just rushing because this camera only records for about 7 minutes and then it goes off. To put the bezel back on, we'll close the front, and then we're just going to put the screws in the back. Open it back up like we showed it in the last video, and then we've just got to put the screws in. We'll make sure I don't put the broken one back in. That's the broken one. Screw over side. Use your tweezers, don't touch the movement. Or if you're just practicing, you can just pop the screws in. Screw it in. You don't need to watch any more video, will you? Make sure your screwdriver's the right size for the screw, not too wide, not too narrow. Blah blah blah, screw it in. That's it, screw it in, not too tight, not too soft. Make sure it's flush, make sure the screws are flush. Make sure the movement's flush, because sometimes it can be twisted. Make sure it's not twisted. The balance is actually good on this. Pull it out, set the hands, push it in. Mind your little Waltham. Fantastic, good little movement, fantastic little watches. Waltham's easy something you might be able to find or come across. But again, you've got to be careful when you're buying them. I might talk about that later. Because I bought this one and it had a broken screw in it and the stem's not quite right and the hinge on the front, I just grabbed it, I bought it, see the gap there? There's a gap there and a gap there and the hinge is buckled in the middle, so you get home, it's no good. Anyway, that's how you put the movement back in. I hope it helps somebody. All the best.